Welcome back to the eSIM Studios YouTube channel. I wanted to discuss something actually really cool that Samsung looks like they're about to implement into future flagship smartphones. So we just got word that Samsung is exploring liquid cooling to combat chipset thermal throttling. So Samsung is reportedly investigating the implementation of liquid cooling technology in its smartphone chipsets to address thermal throttling issues, a feature previously pioneered by gaming smartphone brand RedMagic. We all have seen those RedMagic phone reviews where they have the cool LED lights on the back with sometimes they're see-through with some liquid cooling running through the back of the phone. Not just a vapor chamber, it will have a vapor chamber and liquid cooling implemented inside the Samsung phone, future Samsung flagship phone. Now, I don't think it's going to be as cool as RedMagic, where you're going to be able to see all these cool lights and actually see the liquid go through it, kind of like a gaming PC. No, they're going to hide it within the phone, but it will be liquid cooled. So this exploration is occurring at Samsung's Production Technology Research Institute in South Korea, with a dedicated organization, a special team formed just for this purpose. They're aiming to surpass the limitations of current vapor chamber technology. While vapor chambers have proven that they do work on other high performance chipsets, they honestly don't. So on a lot of these Snapdragon chipsets, the RedMagic does run the Qualcomm Snapdragon chips, and when you ramp them up, it's just like a car. It's why I compare phones to cars, CPUs to engines, because it's essentially the same thing. When you rev them up, when you're running high RPMs on a vehicle, on a sports car, on a race car, your temperature gauge on your vehicle goes up, right? The more RPMs, the harder you run it, the hotter it's going to get. Same thing with these CPUs. Now, with these Qualcomm Snapdragon CPUs, a production unit like let's just throw out a OnePlus 15. Remember when the OnePlus 15 was first announced and some of the tech reviewers got them, and the word on the street is they overheat. Well, the OnePlus developers went back to the lab and actually reduced the clock speed just slightly, just enough to where it won't overheat. It won't work so hard to where it gets, overheated, where the temperature rises. Well, Qualcomm developers seem to have found just the right clock speed for a lot of their CPUs, and thankfully right now the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 and Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 don't really have any overheating issues. Now, you can score higher scores on benchmark tests if you rev it up, if you ramp it up all the way, but then you run into heat issues, and when the phone notices it getting hot, it scales down the usage, it scales down the performance to cool down the phone. Well, that's an issue with performance and benchmarking. Now, going back to Samsung's Exynos 2700 CPU, 2600 CPU. We all know Samsung wants to move to their own CPUs, right? Just like Apple has with their CPUs, just like Google has with their CPUs, like Xiaomi is doing with their own CPUs. We discussed that in one of last week's shows. Now, Samsung has something special, I think, but there's a little problem that they're having before their CPUs, their Exynos CPUs, get really, honestly, fully adopted. And they're still like a year or two away from really implementing all of their Exynos CPUs into their phones and kicking Qualcomm to the curb. And that will happen eventually. We just don't know when. Now, the main issue, besides production, is the heat. These Exynos 2600 CPUs in testing scored higher. There's some benchmark scores out there where it beats the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 in single core and multi-core performance. It also beats the Bionic, what is it, A19 CPU and single core and multi-core score. But that was, if you go behind the curtains, look a little bit behind the scenes, Samsung did that testing, and when it came out, it made big time news, headline news, because it's like, whoa, Samsung's really got something on their hands. Well, if you peek behind the curtain, they did that testing on a liquid nitrogen cooled Exynos CPU, meaning, yeah, you can achieve those scores, but you got to connect it to a really super advanced cooling system, because remember, when the heat goes up, the computer tells it to ramp down so the heat comes down. Well, that's an issue because you can't put that in a phone, right? Because it's always going to get too hot and it's always going to ramp down. Well, it appears Samsung is taking some RedMagic technology theory and going to try to apply that to future Samsung phones, because if they essentially implement a liquid cooling system, because the vapor chamber is just not enough to keep it cooled down to where you can rev those RPMs. The thermal throttling is going to reduce that clock speed, and you're just not going to get the flagship performance that you expect, right? I think Samsung is going to try and do this not with the S27 series. Now, they might. I think they're doing a bunch of testing right now, but I think you're going to see this in the upcoming S28 series, because this is not a small feat. You're going to have to implement liquid cooling, which again is kind of hard. And the only reason RedMagic shows you on the back of their phones the cool designs with the neon lights and the liquid cooling looks like a gaming PC, let's be honest, is because they can't put it underneath the phone. RedMagic, it's a company, they have R&D, but when you're talking about Samsung and their R&D team, research and development, Samsung has got way more resources to test stuff for research and development. So Samsung, that special team they put together, is hard at work trying to implement a liquid cooling feature that's underneath the phone, where you're not going to see that cool liquid cooling. You're not going to see these cool neon lights. No, they're trying to put it underneath the phone. And again, RedMagic has to do that because there's simply just not enough room inside the phone to tuck that liquid cooling in there. So they're just showing you on the back of the phone liquid cooling because they have to. So it's not like, oh yeah, look at our phones, they're so cool. No, it's because they cannot fit it underneath the phone. They just don't have that much resources, money, technology to cram it all up underneath there. So this is a very cool thing, and I think honestly this is going to be the only way Samsung at the moment, right? I'm talking in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm not talking the next 5 years, the next 10 years. But in the next 2 to 3 years, this is the only way, in my opinion, that Samsung will be able to fully adopt their own Exynos CPU into upcoming flagship phones. And let's be honest, it's probably going to be in the Pro and the Ultra model, but we kind of know what's coming in the S27 series. I don't know what's coming in the S28 series. I'm assuming they're going to have an S28, S28 Plus, S28 Pro, and S28 Ultra. The liquid cooling will probably be in the Pro and the Ultra, and I don't know what they're going to put in the base models or the base and the Plus. They could do a staggered launch where they have their Exynos in the Pro and Ultra, because by then it will be the Exynos 27 or 2800. I'm not sure, but these things ramp up and generate so much heat that this is essentially the only way that they can move forward while implementing it into their phones. If they want full adoption from their flagship models, they're going to have to find other ways to get this done. And at the moment, it looks like this liquid cooling thing sounds pretty cool. If they can get it relatively cool, you're gonna see, I expect big performance numbers from these Exynos CPUs, because liquid cooling does a tremendous job at cooling down that CPU. It does way more than just your typical vapor chamber, or saying, oh, we expanded the vapor chamber by 33% this year over last year. It's kind of like, okay, but in real world application, like how does that transfer to keeping the phone cool? Does it drop it by a couple degrees Celsius, a few degrees Fahrenheit? What are we talking about here, right? You can say, oh, it's this percent bigger vapor chamber. Okay, but give us numbers. Does that keep the CPU within check? But when they figure out this liquid cooling technology, it's going to drop not just a few Celsius or a few Fahrenheit. No, it's going to drop it like, I don't know, a lot. At least double digits, 10, 20 degrees cooler than if you ran it without the liquid cooler. So this looks cool. I hope it doesn't add on, if much, to the final price tag. Because remember, with all this new technology they're putting in there, Samsung is spending millions of dollars to try and implement this new technology into their phones, and they pass it on to the consumer, right? I mean, we're going to be getting new camera sensors. We're going to be getting this new, for the S27 series, a new Snapdragon CPU with UFS 5.0 storage, LPDDR6 RAM. You're going to be getting all sorts of new technology. It looks like they're finally going to give us everything in the kitchen sink in this upcoming model. But moving into the S28 series, I just hope all this extra R&D doesn't add on to the price tag, to the final price tag. We shall find out. But this is very cool, and I wanted to make sure I brought this to you ASAP so everybody's aware of what Samsung's doing. So appreciate the time. Subscribe to the eSIM Studios YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out.
Yeah. Woo.
I just need my space right now.
Fresh off the G5 jet, I'm on my way to a brand new kit.